There you go. Anytime.
Okay.
Yeah, good.
Well, I guess they want to begin with name, rank, and serial number, Ken, so we'll do that a few times. Probably ought to include your class for this purpose.
Sure. I'm Ken Ruscio, and I'm the president of Washington and Lee now, member of the class of 1976.
Let's begin at the beginning. Did you know anything about mock convention before you got here as a student? And if not, when do you remember first encountering this hoopla called mock convention?
Well, I don't think I knew much about the mock convention when I came. I came in 1972, so it would have been right after a mock convention had occurred. So the talk would have been, gee, the 72 thing was great. We have to start getting ready for the 1976 one. So I had 4 full years of preparation leading up to the 76 convention.
And how did you come to be involved? I mean, we hear that an extraordinarily high percentage of the student body winds up being involved. Did somebody find you, or were you seeking an opportunity?
Well, I did come here as a political junkie and a major in politics right from the beginning. Got into American government classes and things like that, and very soon the conversation was, you know, we're doing the mock convention, and who wants to get involved? And, you know, as a freshman at W&L, then as now, people always want to get involved. They sign up for too many things, not enough things at Washington and Lee. And so I got right in the thick of it. And by the end of my freshman year, I was one of the co-chairs of the mock convention. So I was in hook, line, and sinker right from the very beginning.
What role did faculty that you remember, or perhaps people in the administration, play, if any, in sort of nurturing you along the leadership path to this undertaking?
Well, you know, faculty at Washington and Lee still play this role in this particular way. They play a perfect role in guiding students. They don't dictate. They don't. They're not overbearing. They suggest. They advise. They encourage. They inspire. So, to the extent that faculty kind of nudged me in that direction, it was all for, this would be an exciting thing. Why don't you think about it? Why don't you look into it? Here are some of the things that students have done in the past. And faculty have maintained that role with the mock convention today. They're there, but it is a student-run enterprise for sure.
Looking back, do you feel like you had any idea of what you were getting into when you assumed that kind of a leadership role in the convention?
Well, yes and no. It has such a great history. And you look back and you see parades, and you see people like pictures of Harry Truman down Main Street in Lexington. Of course, the famous moment with Alvin Barkley passing away on the stage there, and Eisenhower and Nixon and all of these folks coming to Lexington. So as a student, a new student, you look and you can't really imagine that would happen when it comes time for your turn at the convention, but it does. And you know that there's a high standard that others have set before you. And as a student, you have to live up to that.
We'll reach the point of your transitioning to a dorm counselor leadership role, but talk about the time commitment and the impact of this kind of role on studies, on other extracurricular things. I mean, this is a significant undertaking at the leadership level, isn't it?
Well, it's at the leadership level, and the leadership level goes down pretty far. And what I mean by that is that this is not a 2 or 3 day event. This is a 3 or 4 year event. And you know, certainly at the beginning, a relatively small number are beginning to shape the structure of the administration of it. You know, who's going to do the facilities, who's going to do the social side, who's going to do the political research side and all of that, and then what kind of structure do you need underneath that? So you're building an administrative structure, you're building an enterprise right from the very beginning. So financial, I mean, all of that has to come into play. And it is. It's a lot of money, it's a lot of time, and a lot of responsibility that students have right from the beginning. So yes, a great time commitment.
Do you remember whether a lot of your closer friends were involved in this, or was it a mix of people you knew well and perhaps others that you hardly knew who sort of put an oar in the water and pulled this together?
Well, one of the things that happens, of course, is when you are involved in something like this, the people you work with inevitably become your close friends. So it's you know, a process of coming in as a freshman, finding people who share that kind of interest, and over a 2 to 3 year period, they become good friends. Not every moment is a blissful moment. I can remember some you know, pretty intense discussions about decisions that had to be made, and do we go in this direction? Do we schedule it this way? Do we finance it this way? And sometimes the bounds of those friendships can be tested in the heat of the moment. But in the end, that just solidifies it even more. You've been through a real challenging enterprise.
Give us a sense of both the campus politics and the national politics at that time. What was the dynamic your particular group was dealing with in the mid-'70s?
Well, you know, the mid-'70s, of course. I was here at Washington and Lee when the ceasefire was declared in Vietnam. So we were at the tail end of the whole Vietnam era. I was the first class whose draft numbers were not called. So I had a very high draft number. If the draft had not ended in my particular year, I was going. So I think for those of us who were here, politics was real. It was not a game. It was not pure fun and parades and all of that. We were dealing with issues that mattered to us and mattered to us directly. So the political environment was right there, front and center. We were thinking about national debates because they would have affected us. And so there was an element of fun in the mock convention, to be sure, but there was a real element that we were looking at issues in this country that mattered, and we were doing it in a way that mattered.
You mentioned the parade, and any mock convention conversation inevitably includes that piece.
Right.
What do you remember about your era, the zaniness or the preparations and that whole piece of the puzzle?
One of the greatest pieces of the puzzle of the mock convention is the pageantry. Getting involved in things like the parade and turning the Warner Center into a convention floor, a political convention floor. But the parade, I remember the Kansas float, the Wizard of Oz, with Dorothy, with the guy from Oz, whoever the Wizard of Oz, and the kindergarten kids who were the Munchkins, and but other floats, of course, were there. And we were a Democratic convention in 1976, so there were no elephants, but there were, to be sure, donkeys, which were their own challenges as well. Not as much as elephants, but certainly a challenge.
As it evolved for you, Ken, if I understand correctly, you had been a dorm counselor and and had an opportunity to lead that area of student life, and so there was a transition moment concerning
Right.
your role in the mock convention. Talk about that a little bit.
Well, I had, for 2.5 years, 3 years, had worked with the other leaders of the mock convention, and we put the infrastructure in place. And then my senior year, for my junior year, for my senior year, I was chosen to be the head dorm counselor. And that would really have been impossible to do both of those roles, co-chair of the mock convention and be the head dorm counselor. So I made a difficult decision, and that was to be the head dorm counselor my senior year. But I remained very involved in the mock convention in a more specific way during the senior year. I didn't want to miss it.
Yeah, and attended numerous sessions and were right
Oh,
in
yeah.
the thick of it despite the other role.
Well, the task that I was given was to work very closely with the speakers committee. And I was assigned to be the escort for Senator Dale Bumpers of Arkansas. Pick him up at the airport, make sure he got to where he needed to be, advise him on what the speeches would be like and what the atmosphere would be like, and then find tennis balls for him so he could play a tennis match afterwards.
And you were able to do that successfully.
Absolutely. Press Brown's was open bright and early on Saturday morning, and we stocked up on tennis balls for the senator.
Great. Maybe we'll pause for a moment, see how we're doing, and see if we want to come back and clean up anything.
We're doing great. We're doing great.
Yeah.
My only question would be, as we continue on, were they accurate in their prediction that year in 76?
Oh, okay.
Mhm.
Yes. Okay, good.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, I can tee that up well in a painful way. You ready?
Yeah.
All right. Ken, you may remember that my convention in 1972 blew it and picked Senator Kennedy. And what happened in your year, and what was the ultimate outcome?
In 1972, the convention blew it in their choice. And so in 1976, we knew we had a responsibility to get the university back on track, to get that tradition back to where it needed to be, to amend the mistakes of the previous generation. So we did, to be serious for a moment, we did spend a lot of time trying to research and be specific about who the next presidential candidate would be. We ended up with Jimmy Carter, and as it turned out, that was the right choice. And he was not an obvious choice. It was not a slam dunk choice going into the convention. So I think we were ahead of the nation on predicting that as the outcome. In addition, we also picked the vice presidential candidate absolutely correctly. Now, that's not always done, and many conventions don't take that as seriously, but we were able to get the full ticket. Elvis Presley got nominated for the vice presidency, but he did not carry the day, and Walter Mondale, in fact, carried the day, and so we got the ticket right. And Jimmy Carter honored us with a phone call. He phoned into the convention and accepted the nomination from Washington and Lee.
All right. Good on that score?
Is that okay?
Okay. Change hats and
Right.
try to do a little bit of lead into your return to the university. Talk about your interim career and how you wound up returning to W&L as a member of the faculty, in particular the politics faculty.
Well, I came back to Washington and Lee in 1987 as Dean of Freshmen and as an assistant professor of politics. So from the time I left Washington and Lee until the time I came back, I was immersed in the study of public policy. That interest in politics just carried right through. And when I came back, I was very committed as a political scientist, as a member of the Washington and Lee faculty, to helping students understand the political process, not just in the classroom, but outside of the classroom as well. They were going to be not just future leaders, although they certainly would be, but citizens in their communities, voters, people who had to understand the political process. And so I took that responsibility very seriously when I came back.
Would it be a stretch to say, looking back again, that the convention fueled a sort of an ember that you had about political life and was part of the reason you wound up getting full-time serious about it?
Well, you know, my commitment to educating students about the political process has a number of sources. The mock convention and my involvement in it was certainly one of them. But it had a particular influence on that, in that what I think the mock convention does for our students is it demystifies the political process. A lot of students everywhere in college think of the political process as a black box. You know, they don't know what actually happens in there, but something happens in there, and they think it's pretty important. But if they don't know what happens in there, they feel powerless to influence it and to be involved in it. So I think what the mock convention impressed upon me was that it's not mysterious. It's complicated, it's cumbersome, it's inefficient, it at times can be ugly and contentious.
But all in a wonderful way.
But in a very wonderful way, absolutely.
Okay. Yeah. And as a faculty member, did you keep a hand in, or did you assume this role of not too much because this is a student enterprise?
I think the student, as a faculty member, working with students on the mock convention, I impressed upon them that this was their show. They had to take the responsibility for it. I had my turn at being responsible for it, and now it was their turn. We're also very fortunate here in having an individual who has worked with our students, Professor Bill Connolly, who came to Washington Lee about the same time I did. And Bill has been just a fantastic advisor for this process. He takes that role seriously, but as I mentioned before, he also understands it is a student-run enterprise.
Must be gratifying as a politics professor, and now, of course, president, to watch this from that vantage point as a learning experience for students, and
Yes.
watch them come to understand the political process better.
I had a wonderful moment about a year or so ago. I'm on the board for the American Association of Colleges and Universities. And one of the things that we do in that association is we talk about how important it is for students to be educated as citizens in a democracy. And we were talking about examples of how different colleges do that, and new programs that they're putting in, and new initiatives, and all of that. And my contribution to it was, at Washington and Lee, we've been doing something for over 100 years to educate our students about the political process and to engage them in the political process. And it's the mock convention. No other college or university has anything like that or has had it for as long as we have had it.
So here's the slow curve across the middle of the plate. You're now talking to that prospective high school student who's thinking about college and may have the kind of bent that you had as a 17, 18-year-old. What do you say to that person about coming to Washington and Lee and living the mock con experience?
If I were talking to a prospective college student who has an interest in politics, I would say that there is no other college or university in this country where you can have that kind of engagement with the national level of the political system as you can with Washington and Lee. You get to, through the mock convention, you get to engage in issues, you get to meet national leaders, you get to understand how the political process works, you get to understand how you can influence the political process. There's just nothing like it.
Okay. I'm ready to sort of transition to presidential, if that suits you guys.
Okay.
Maybe we should do a couple of sort of the official, presidential statement kind of things about the project, the Mock-Con project, the gratitude that it's being produced, its value to the university in collecting the materials and making sense of the whole in a permanent way. So start there and we'll see where that leads us.
Washington and Lee is a university that's over 250 years old. Because of that, we have a lot of traditions and we have a lot of stories to tell. And we need to tell those stories. We need to preserve those stories. One of the greatest traditions at Washington and Lee is the mock convention. It's handed down from one student generation to the next. This is a way for us to tell that story, to preserve that story for future generations of students. We want this to be around for the next 100 years as well.
Great. What else in that heading, Jeff, would you see from the president's team? Do you want at least potentially an opener or a closer, as in I'm Ken Ruscio, enjoy watching kind of thing?
It can't hurt.
Okay.
It can't hurt.
Yeah, okay, all right.
Always better to have stuff and not use it.
Okay.
Right, so let's do one as if you were teeing it up at the beginning, you know, welcome to Washington and Lee, we're thrilled about this project, and then we'll do one at the end that says, I hope you've enjoyed watching kind of thing.
We always do that right in the lens.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Probably. So
Okay.
why don't you assume you're launching the video when it is in that living room DVD somewhere in Birmingham, and they're getting ready to watch.
Oh, the Birmingham threw me. I was doing fine.
Philadelphia.
Right. I'm Ken Ruscio, the president of Washington and Lee University. The mock convention is one of the greatest traditions of this place. And I invite you to sit back and look at, let me start that over.
Sure.
Okay. I'm Ken Ruscio, the president of Washington and Lee University. This is a great story of a great tradition at Washington and Lee, the mock convention, and all it has meant to the university over the years. Leave it.
Great.
Is that all right? Okay. All right.
Good.
Good.
All right. Now they've finished watching, and the editors have decided that we need a sort of a capstone at the end from the president. So take a couple of stabs at that.
I hope you've enjoyed the film as much as we've enjoyed putting it together. There are so many stories about the mock convention and about Washington and Lee. It's part of our heritage, and it will be part of our heritage in the years to come.
You're good.
It's good. It's just sort of first take guy, isn't he?
Okay. Okay.
What do you guys?
I have two questions. The easy one would be outside of your political interests at the time you were part of mock convention.
Yeah.
Were there any skills that you took
Yeah.
away from mock convention that helped you
Sure.
in future?
Yeah.
If you could look at both.
Okay.
Answer both.
Okay.
How about that?
One of the great things about the mock convention is that it is such a far-ranging enterprise that students get involved in many, many ways. Certainly the political one is obvious, but accountants manage the books. Business people manage the organization. Event planners know how to pull things off in great ways. The leadership skills and the management skills that students have to learn on the ground are immeasurable.
And even a fundraising piece where students actually are charged with the responsibility of raising funds to support the enterprise. I would think that'd be a great skill to acquire early on.
The mock convention is not run on a dime. To accomplish the things that the mock convention has to accomplish requires resources. And so the students have to figure out where those revenues are going to come from. How are they going to raise that money? Through individuals who will support it, through selling of t-shirts or hats or whatever. But they have to figure that out.
What else?
I have one more question.
Mm-hmm.
Can you turn the camera off while I phrase that? Okay.
You know, as president of the university, and as well, let me start over. As president of the university and as someone who has served as dean of freshmen, as well as a member of the faculty, one of the things that I have to think about is when we're entrusting students with a lot of responsibility, do I need to hold my breath? And the answer is yes. But the other part of the answer is that our students never seem to let us down. They know that they have to act responsibly. And part of our role as members of the faculty and members of the administration is to help them understand that if they want that responsibility, they have to exercise it well. Mm-hmm. And they never let us down. You want me to tell you one story off the camera about the parade?
Can I, before we turn off,
Yeah.
I have one question.
Yeah.
See whether this national conventions have become different.
Yeah, right.
How does
Actually,
the mock convention
Right.
continue to be relevant when national conventions really aren't
Yeah,
anymore?
yeah, yeah.
I mean,
Because the
that's a
cage
challenge.
based and, yeah.
There's nothing to it. They're just shows. They're
Right.
shows compared to the one where your convention went 2 ballots.
Mm-hmm.
Imagine a convention going 2 ballots, and it won't happen.
Right,
It's
exactly,
done.
exactly.
And so they have to build in their own challenges,
Right.
I think. That's what I'm sort of getting at.
No, that's right. And, okay, let me,
To Bo.
okay, Bo, okay. Right. The mock convention has changed over the years, and it's changed to reflect the changes in the convention itself, the national convention itself. The convention plays a different role in the political process than it did in 1924, in 1956, in 1976. And to do that, the tradition has had to evolve at Washington and Lee. And in fact, if I think of how the mock convention has changed, even as it has remained true to itself, it's reflective of Washington and Lee in general. We hold on to traditions here, even as we adjust to the changes that are going on in the world around us. And the mock convention is a great story in that respect. It's different, but it's the same.
Mm-hmm. And still quite intent on being purposeful from the standpoint of real live hands-on research with state chairmen,
Right.
trying as best as possible to get it right based upon
Right.
what's really going on out and about, rather than let's have a party and pick somebody.
Well, the national convention for both political parties plays the role of validating the party's choice as the presidential nominee. That has not changed. What has changed is how the convention gets there. And so Washington and Lee still wants to predict the nominee of the party out of power. That is still the goal. It has to be done differently because the political process has evolved. Still the same, but different.
I think I have one more thing to add maybe to that. Bruce and I have been filming, hired by the Mock Convention Committee since 1992. 1992. You've been since 1998. And 88, I'm sorry, 88. The technology
Yeah,
in those years
yeah.
has changed immeasurably, and the students are so cutting edge, tech savvy, that we've actually learned things from them over time. But that has to be incredibly expensive. Do you know, has the budget grown with the mock convention, or is that anything you know of?
I'm sure it has, but I'm not sure I can.
Okay, that's probably a
Yeah, yeah. Connolly would certainly be the one to. Yeah, yeah. Yeah.
Probably better from him. I mean,
Yeah.
I was struck this year, live tweets from the floor.
Oh, yeah.
Headsets,
Yeah.
Oh, that was
they
awesome.
are so wired themselves.
Well, and how the students deal with the press is, the press that descends upon Washington and Lee for that. We had reporters that were tweeting from the floor of the convention last time, live blogging as it was going on, and our students were right there with them doing it. Yeah. So.
Okay.
I think we're good. I'm
Okay.
very happy.
Okay.
Everybody else happy?